Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Terence Crawford, Canelo, Dimitri Bivol. They all are going to have something in common after September 13th when Terence Crawford faces off against Canelo. What they're going to have in common is Crawford and Bivol will be linked to Canelo. Bivol's already defeated Canelo. Terence Crawford, some experts say, is going to beat Canelo. However, on the other hand, there are many experts who say there's no way in the world Crawford can beat Canelo. Now, the argument is a good big man always beats a good small man. And when they look at Bivol, Canelo, Crawford, they see Bivol as being the biggest, Canelo being bigger, but Crawford just being big. And they feel that Canelo's just going to be way too big for Crawford to really have a chance to get a victory, hurt Canelo, discourage Canelo, deter Canelo to get in the ring and do anything to him. The same way they say Canelo encountered those challenges when he faced Bivol. Bivol was bigger than Canelo, stronger than Canelo, and Canelo, his punches, his shots, and everything, the overall style just wasn't effective enough. Even though Canelo's a pressure fighter and Bivol's more of a slick technician, mover boxer, Canelo just wasn't able to slow down and have an effect on a guy like Bivol because there are weight classes for a reason. Those same discussion points are what they're applying to Terence Crawford right now, and the fight hasn't happened. But there is something that's pretty interesting for us to point out. Now, size comparisons with Bivol versus Canelo versus Crawford. Bivol 6'1", reach is 72 inches. He's a light heavyweight. That's his natural weight class. He is a light heavyweight. We all know what Bivol and his style is all about volume. He's very disciplined, very patient, and he controls the range beautifully. Terence Crawford showed me when he fought the guy Madrimov that if he has to throw more punches in a round to stay safe, to control the range, that he has the discipline to do it. The difference is Canelo is not Madrimov. And Madrimov was a good, strong fighter. You know that. You know how you know that? Because Crawford told you. And I've said this, I'm like a broken record when it comes to what I'm about to say, but some people don't seem to understand. When they were asking Crawford about Madrimov, so Crawford, how was it being in the ring with him? He said, he's strong. I was doing this, I was doing that, but again, he's strong. And he emphasized the strength, the power, the brute force that he experienced in there with Madrimov. Fans don't want to hear that shit, but that's the reality. But at the same time, can Crawford, against a guy like Canelo, do like Dimitri Bivol and increase the volume round after round to control the range? And does he have the discipline to do that across a whole 12 rounds? Now, the problem is Canelo, who's 5'8", reaches 70.5. He's a natural super middleweight. His style, plenty power, plenty pressure, and very, very sharp counters. Understand this. Canelo has been very effective. Fight after fight after fight. With the power, with the pressure, and his counters. Of course, as far as the volume of punches, Canelo doesn't really do that anymore, okay? But let's not act like his style hasn't evolved to a point to where he's deficient in the ring. No, Canelo works smarter, not harder anymore. Canelo has so much power, he doesn't need to throw a high volume of punches. because your 10 that you throw while you're moving, your feet aren't planted, and you're tickling, coochie cooing, chicken pecking Canelo, his 2 have more of an impact and effect on his opponent than the 10 they throw. So Canelo is a problem. Now, the counters, the pressure, how is Crawford going to deal with that? Now, a lot of people are counting on Terence Crawford, who stands 5'8", has a 74-inch reach. So let's just go ahead and say, about a 4-inch reach advantage over Canelo. He is a natural, he is really, when it comes to Terence Crawford and his weight, I don't even know how to classify Terence Crawford. You know what I'm saying? But what I will tell you is, come fight night, Terence Crawford is definitely going to be a 168-pounder. But this is my concern for Terence Crawford. We know he's a switch hitter. When Terence Crawford starts off a fight, if he starts off orthodox, he will go into the phone booth, take off the suit and tie. He come out with an S on his chest. He turns into Southpaw Man. When Terence Crawford turns into Southpaw Man, bad things happen for his opponents. However, it was happening at 147 pounds. He only had one fight at 154. And this is a whole nother video I'm going to give you. I'm just going to mention this because I got a video coming on this. You know what's the real concern here? Of course, Crawford has the reach advantage. Of course, Crawford can switch hit. He can time. He's got the IQ. Ring generalship and everything, Crawford has always dominated. But this is the problem going up against Canelo. Them damn gloves. Crawford was doing the business, wearing 8-ounce gloves. I talked about this before he fought Madrimov. I said, everybody keep talking all this shit about Crawford's going to go and knock out Madrimov. I said, first of all, Madrimov can scrap. Y'all don't. And that's the thing about talking about boxing. Boy, when some people come into the comments, I just try not to say nothing crazy. But, man, trust me, behind the video, I'll be cussing my ass off. But I don't want to disrespect nobody. Madrimov could scrap and he could crack. But I said, at 154, Crawford loses the luxury of wearing 8-ounce gloves. That 2 ounces makes a big difference. And I said, but we're going to see if it shows up in that fight against Madrimov. And you know what? It showed up. Crawford didn't get a knockout. Now Crawford is going up to fight Canelo. A natural, well, he moved up, but I would say Canelo's a natural super middleweight now. 10-ounce gloves. What makes anyone think, although Crawford has timing, he has IQ, he's a switch hitter, what makes anyone think the power that Crawford had at 147 that didn't really show up at 154, but he did hurt Madrimov, so you can't take that from him. He did hurt Madrimov, but he wasn't able to stop him. What makes you think Crawford now, who is a big man going up against a bigger man, who's used to wearing smaller gloves, but now has to wear a bigger glove, is going to get in the ring against Canelo and do something to Canelo that he didn't do to Madrimov? That's the only question I'm asking. Remember, on this channel, Hood Champion, I'm not a fan of nobody. I don't have a favorite. I just talk boxing. Because I got like 3 more videos I'm going to do that's going to tell you how Crawford going to kick Canelo's ass. So don't get all worked up. We're just having a conversation. But you tell me how Crawford going to do that to Canelo. Most experts, ex-boxers, boxing analysts, I ain't talking about me and these other YouTubers. We're just having a conversation. But the people who are qualified, right, I would say to possibly get paid to be boxing consultants, not Kinahan and Bob Arum and that shit. They'll tell you they have weight classes for a reason. And I think what we may have saw with Crawford and Majimov is that the reason for the weight classes. Because at the end of that fight, out of everything that happened in that fight, which I thought Crawford won, okay? But I heard when he said, he's strong. When he said that repeatedly, I said, shit. Crawford sounded like he didn't want to go through that again. So now it's for him to just jump beyond 160, forget 160, to jump over Murtazaliev, to jump over any of the other killers there at 154 and go beyond 160 and straight to Canelo. I don't know if I'm convinced that deep down Crawford believes that he can get in that ring and put the bing bings on Canelo. Because he didn't seem to have the confidence that he would win a rematch with Majimov. But I can understand him taking that fight with Canelo. Because Crawford already told us. A man said he just looking for the biggest fights possible, the most money, and retire. And a lot of people who are supporting Terence Crawford, right? I think people are going to be very disappointed if Crawford gets in that ring and for some reason he gets hit. Because he's going to get hit with some shit, right? But then he has a change of expression and a change of heart, just like Jermell Charlo. And if he has that look like, what was that? That's what happened to Jermell Charlo. Jermell Charlo was like, what was that shit? He didn't want nothing to do with it again. There was another shot, I think Canelo was hitting him on the arms. And you can see he's just like, nah, I ain't never felt this shit before. And he didn't want nothing to do with it. And if Crawford goes through the fight and gets to 12 rounds from just pulling a Jermell Charlo, which was a lion that Canelo turned into a pussycat, the roar turned into meow, meow, meow. He took all 9 of his lives in that ring. And then Crawford loses and then goes on into retire and basically laughs at everybody, says, shit, I'm retiring with 1 loss on my record, but I took it all the way to the bank. You know what fans are going to say? Yeah, you took it to the bank, Trick Daddy. But you took it to the house, and now you took it to the stupid as well. Let me tell you, man, the height and the reach advantage that Bivol had over Canelo. You got to understand, Bivol, that's his natural weight, man. And to be quite honest with you, Bivol's talked about possibly going up to heavyweight. So that tells you that Bivol wasn't weight bullying because he fights at 175, but Canelo rehydrated to whatever he did, and then Bivol did what he did. Canelo just couldn't mess with him, man. It was too big. But this shit about Crawford having a height advantage and Crawford having a reach advantage, so Crawford's going to be able to basically put on the same dazzling display of talent in boxing that Bivol did and control Canelo and turn Canelo and put the bing bings on Canelo and have Canelo looking destroyed, deconflicted, deflated. Look, I don't know if I want to ascribe to that. Hold on, let me close this garage. My son just left out, and whenever he goes out on his e-bike, you know, he always leaves that damn garage open. One of the doors. I got 3 damn doors on the garage. Okay, it's closing now. But just because Bivol did it doesn't mean Crawford did. You know, Canelo's fighting a bigger guy. Canelo's trying to be great. And he lost. Look, nothing wrong with that. Crawford is trying to be great, but don't think for a second that the height and the reach advantage is going to be the determining factor in Crawford winning the fight. I don't think so. I think if Crawford can do like Bivol and keep up his volume of punches, stay behind that longer reach, I think he has a really, really good chance. But again, you got to think about Canelo and how Crawford has given up muscle mass. And he's given up ring weight. Now, Crawford and his team are working very smartly to have Crawford bulk up. But at what point does Crawford ascend to, in regards to his weight, that's going to help him compete mass for mass with Canelo? But also, what point can he possibly go beyond to where now, where he's trying to retain his speed, right? Hand speed, foot speed, to where now he's put on so much mass to the point to where that's been diminished. And he can't afford that against Canelo. You see, people think Crawford's going to be too much for Canelo, and I understand. I totally understand. But there's a reason why Bivol was too much for Canelo. Crawford can do this. If he stays behind a disciplined jab, then he'll be okay for the most part. But the problem comes, right? Can he absorb Canelo's power on his arms, on his forearms, the bicep, in his body, possibly getting caught, in the top of the head, on the chin, because Jermell Charlo got hit in the top of the head. Can Crawford absorb those shots? Bivol was able to absorb all those shots that Canelo threw, and not many landed cleanly in Bivol's face, but everything else was just on the arms, not even really in the body. He tried. It was just on the arms. But can Crawford, who's not as big as Bivol, not as strong as Bivol, who it's impossible for him to rehydrate to what Bivol rehydrated to, can Crawford absorb those shots the way Bivol was able to absorb those shots? I'm going to tell you, I don't know. But some would say, you know what? All that doesn't matter because Crawford is so good that he can fight the perfect fight. That's the opinion of many. And because he's so good and can fight the perfect fight, don't think that he's going to give Canelo a stationary target. The same way Bivol didn't give him a stationary target. And let me tell you something. That's a lot. That's a lot of really grand expectation from a guy like Crawford, who's bubbling up to 168 to fight a killer like Canelo. That's all I'm saying. Even if Canelo has a low output, I just think Crawford trying to overwhelm Canelo with volume, I just don't think he could be as effective as Bivol. I just don't think so, man. Bivol's hands are faster than Crawford's in combination. He throws better combinations than Crawford, and he has a different style, that Russian style. Bivol doesn't have your typical slick, I would say I hate talking like this, but I think we're all adults, so you know what I'm saying. That slick, Floyd Mayweather, African-American, athletic, boxing style, high IQ. Bivol isn't like that. Bivol has that Russian style, that Klitschko style, that European style. You know what I'm saying? That's just not something that you can just bring anyone in the ring to emulate that shit. And I did see, one thing I'll say is this. Canelo doesn't have that European style of fighting either. So when Crawford fought Madrimov had that herky-jerky, weird, up and down bouncing style. Canelo doesn't fight like that. Canelo is straightforward. Got some head movement and, you got his combinations, got his cutting off the ring and going to the body and everything. But Canelo doesn't have that kind of movement. Canelo doesn't have that kind of footwork. Canelo doesn't have that kind of athleticism. So that's something where we got to be fair here. Same way Crawford can't emulate Bivol, Canelo cannot emulate Madrimov. He can't emulate Madrimov. Those are facts, people. I'm not making this shit up. How do young people say facts? Facts. Facts in that blue hat bullshit they put on your thing. Blue hat. Whatever that shit means. But if somehow Crawford can avoid being a stationary target, can up his volume of punches, stay behind that reach, and keep moving, then I think he has a good chance, especially if he does that the first 4 or 5 rounds, and Canelo finds himself chasing Crawford. Canelo could gas out. But again, Canelo may not even worry about chasing Crawford down because he's just cutting the ring off, throwing hard shots, and then if Crawford looks like he's affected by those punches, let me tell you, if Crawford is affected by Canelo's shots, Crawford's not going to let his hands go. Not as much as what you think. I'm telling you. From experience. And I know you're saying you're Terence Crawford. No, that's not what I said, McNicholas. I've been in situations where I've hit people and they come out guns blazing, bing, bing, they're afraid to throw. And I was sparring one time, but they set me up to get killed. And I was good for about 3 rounds. Anyway, fucking got tired. That motherfucker was throwing some heat. I was overseas fighting. He was throwing some heat. And I was like, oh, hell no. But it was more because I was tired, you know what I'm saying? But my punch output, that shit dropped off. But that's a whole other story. I'll give it to you another time. So anyway, if Crawford can't absorb those shots, I just think he's going to turn into a Jamel Charlo. You know what I'm saying? And fans are going to be pissed off. Just got to understand, man. Canelo flipping that script on Terence Crawford. Look, Canelo's comfortable at 168. Crawford and his team are doing everything they can from the weighted vests and everything. But the reality is, no matter how much Terence Crawford says, look, I spar bigger guys, I beat bigger guys' asses in the gym. You just got to wonder if Crawford is really comfortable, or really if he's as familiar with what is perceived to us, the public, is he as familiar and comfortable with entering what we perceive as unknown territory at 168? You know what I'm saying? Like for me, that's what I'm saying. Yo, I hear you talking, but are you really comfortable entering this unknown territory? Because, see, we've never seen him fight at 168. Maybe his slickness could frustrate Canelo. And if he did it, I think he has to do it early. But, you see, this is the problem. If Canelo's walking through his punches, I'm telling you, Crawford's punch output is going to diminish, and he's going to turn into a boxer runner. And the physicality could take over. Again, we talked about the mass. Canelo's mass, man. And if Crawford did bulk up on fight night and we see, damn, Crawford 167 pounds or something, which I doubt they'll do that. But let's say he is. The speed's going to get compromised. And, bad things can happen. Because unlike Dimitri Bivol, Crawford, this is just my opinion. I've played sports with a lot of people. I've had some friends, them guys, they just can't put weight on. They're so slim and so skinny. When they start taking creatine and protein shakes and eating right and lifting weights, they start to fill out nicely. You would think that they were, doing some extreme training to get all them striations and stuff in their body. No, they're just naturally skinny people who have to really work really hard to put on weight. And they just don't have to work as hard as some of us who just don't have those genetics. But for me, Crawford doesn't have the same frame as a Bivol to come in the ring at 168 pounds, you know what I mean? And Bivol was 175, but me just trying to see Crawford's frame at 168 and still be able to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, like we were used to him doing. I just don't think so. I think people are under the misconception that Crawford is going to still look the way he looked at 147 pounds. He didn't look that way at 154. But the opponent's style had a lot to do with it. Although Canelo's bigger, he doesn't have the same style. And styles make fights, right? I'm not making that up. So maybe Canelo has the perfect style for Terence Crawford, even though it's at 168. But I'm just telling you, hey, look, one guy's proven to have some durability between 168 and 175, right? And the other guy is not. Now remember, I'm not saying Canelo wins. I'm not saying Crawford wins. We're just having a conversation. I'll let you guys seagull and squawk about in the comment section. I'm just sitting here, giving you, a few things to think about. But here's the twist, right? Crawford isn't trying to fight like Bivol. Not at all. He's bringing a different kind of slickness. I expect the feints. Switching stances, I mean, Canelo has good eyes. He can time that. I think Canelo's going to come in there guns blazing. But the psychological warfare, that additional mass, and is just something that we're going to find out early. Who's winning and losing the battle. But if Canelo can't pin Terence Crawford down, and Crawford can work from the first second of the first round to the last second of the 12th round, when I say work, means volume of punches, escaping, using those escape routes, staying off the ropes, not allowing Canelo to cut the ring off. If Canelo does, step into him and grab him, clinch him. Crawford's tough. If he's strong. If he grabs you, that shit's called gorilla grip. If Crawford put that Omaha, Nebraska gorilla grip on your ass, you ain't getting away. Then Crawford has a very good chance of getting the victory. So if Canelo can't pin him or land clean, let me tell you something. The size advantage may not be enough. So is Canelo too big and too strong for Terence Crawford? I mean, I say, I would say he's bigger than Crawford. He's stronger than Crawford. Too big, too strong. Look, maybe. But it's only if he can impose that strength. If he can't impose that strength, that shit doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? If Crawford makes him miss and counters with precision, let me tell you something, man. That size gap between him and Canelo, that becomes less of a weapon and more of a liability for Canelo. Anyway, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, 7 continents. Terence Crawford's big, Canelo's bigger. Bivol was the biggest. A good big man always beats a good small man. Canelo's bigger than Crawford, so he should beat him if you listen to the boxing experts. But if you listen to Hood Champion, I'll tell you, I hear you on that. But I also hear and see and understand that Canelo's mass, his power, his strength, his pressure in trying to cut the ring off could prove as a liability if Crawford can up the volume, control the ring, can counter with precision, and maintain his stamina across the 12 rounds. Then we're going to have a very, very interesting fight. And Crawford just may upset the apple cart. But if you go with what most boxing experts say, Crawford don't stand a goddamn chance. Anyway, y'all keep cool. I'm in the breeze.